This is the e-learning podcast, episode number 52.
When we began, it was we had a background in media content production, we had a background in software, we had a background in international development. We kind of brought these elements together, linked with a kind of an interest in how gaming worked and gamification principles around learning, and essentially proposed a project around security training for NGO.
Welcome to the e-learning podcast. My name is Laddick, and I'm your host from lmspulse.com. My guest for today is Mike Todd. Mike is the CEO of NearLife, a company that develops virtual reality and interactive video solutions and tools. With clients including USAID and the World Health Organization, Mike and his clients are convinced of the power of immersive content for high-stakes training. In this exciting conversation, Mike and I talk about how he shifted his career from the international development space to the education space without really leaving the international development space, and why NearLife solutions have resonated in humanitarian, health, safety, and other critical contexts. We also talk about why the time of VR for everyone is closer than we think, thanks to authoring and delivery tools that greatly speed up the content creation process. Now, of course, creating immersive media is still more expensive than standard content. So we also talk about why the ROI on VR has improved, but the ways in which it's easier to make that calculation as well. And then finally, we talk about the most important element of creating truly immersive, effective, and sustainable learning experiences: a great team. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsors.
The e-learning podcast is sponsored by the e-learning Success Summit. Learn from more than 40 experts how to teach, work, and learn online without being overwhelmed. Get your free ticket to the summit at elearningsuccesssummit.com. And lmspulse.com, your best source for news, information, and resources for e-learning professionals for more than 10 years. Get our free roundup of the week's top news at lmspulse.com.
Hello, Mike. Welcome to the e-learning podcast. So great to have you today.
Well, yep. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on.
Mike, I ask this of everybody. So all I see from you is that you're sitting in the background, in your background is a bunch of books. So where do we find you in the world today?
We're based in the UK, in the Manchester area. So as you can probably tell, I'm working from home today, although we recently have begun to transition back to the office, but that's where we are and that's where we're based.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I have this, I've been using this podcast and the other events that we do kind of as a time capsule for seeing the pandemic, since it's been fun to track, especially, the e-learning universe has just really exploded over the last year. So right now it's still work from home, or you could actually go to the office today?
In fact, I was in this morning. We kind of doing 3 days in the office at the moment with a kind of a couple of days remote, and we're trying to be flexible with it and try and figure out what works best. Like most people, we adapted to remote working, and we're obviously in an industry that is very much about remote working. So I think we've learned to do some things better. Some things you can't replicate, that in-person interaction, which, I think a lot of people have highlighted. But certainly we've only the last couple of months, we've started to try and get back together. We've got some new people starting. When you're trying to kind of build a team and get that, get people collaborating, it is good to be back.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Clearly we've seen productivity go up. We've seen, remote working and remote learning. The concept is proven now, right? Like there's no going back here. But then there's just something refreshing about having a coffee with somebody. There's something refreshing about, being in that room, being like, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?"
Yeah, exactly. There's that. It's just a bit more dynamic interaction. You don't have to schedule the engagement, and you can deal with some things quicker. But I think we work with people all around the world, and I think we probably improved in the way we can do that over the last 12 plus months, and
nice
the way we engage with people remotely. So.
Well, we've been talking for way too long to not actually talk about who you are. You are the CEO of an organization or company called NearLife. And the reason why I wanted to have you on the show is because you're all about immersive learning. I don't want to steal any thunder. I've teed you up in the introduction. People have heard, kind of your canned bio, but you tell us in your words over the, what is it? What is NearLife all about? What do you provide, and how is it differentiated?
So yeah, that's right. We're in the immersive learning space, or the immersive content space. We are a company that's, and I suppose it's in the name to some extent, but we're about taking those realistic experiential situations when you learn by doing, when you participate, you're put in a position where you make choices. It could be through role play simulation. We're all about how you take that kind of, as I say, learning by doing, that kind of experiential approach, and how you can bring that into kind of the digital world and, scale that type of experience through allowing people to have those immersive, more interactive experiences online to kind of improve. I mean, the research all shows it, how it can improve the knowledge retention, it improves the engagement, people prefer it. So that's the space we've been in for the last 5+ years, beginning in many ways as a kind of a full service consultancy content software company, through to right now where we very much focused on a solution that makes it easy and accessible for people to be able to scale their learning in this space.
Super cool. Let's call it out here, because some people are going to be, wondering, is this virtual reality, or is immersive learning something different? Or maybe they're one and the same.
Well, we use immersive in the broadest sense. In the immersive meaning, it's something which you're more immersed in, something that you're more engaged with, something you're interacting with. But definitely, our authoring tool at NearLife that we have, it's definitely has VR capabilities. So using 360 or 180 video, allowing you to have the interaction. So we do mean immersive in the traditional sense. A lot of people understand it, but as I say, we take the slightly broader definition of immersive, meaning allowing people to be immersed in an experience and participating in what they're doing, not just be receiving in a kind of a passive way the learning.
Okay, excellent. I know, we had a little bit of time before we started the show to talk about your origins and how NearLife got started. I'd love to hear that story. Especially since it sounds like it may be connected near and dear to my experience back in the humanitarian and development aid world. But how did this get started?
Yeah, well, that's really where we came from. I mean, our kind of origin story, if you like, is involved with when you're in the international development spaces. You're obviously familiar with, Steve. There is a lot of people do training around things like security awareness, whether it's being aware of landmines or what you might do at a roadblock, how you can negotiate access to difficult areas, being in a post-conflict environment where the situation may be unstable. So obviously you've got a lot of heightened risks. And I mean, with my background, I used to work for the UN a number of years ago, and I was in the UK kind of government's secondment register. So I wasn't really an expert, but the list of experts who might be posted overseas at a kind of short notice. And to be able to be on that list, to be able to be a kind of sent overseas at short notice, you would have had to have done a particular type of kind of security training. They used to call it, still in like hostile environment awareness training, kind of awareness, but it was really about self-awareness, what you would do in a situation, to think and be aware and of your environment and all the rest of it. But it was very much an immersive exercise. You do kind of a week-long session, very expensive, really, with actors, role play situations.
Yeah, we did it. I mean, we did it when we were in Jordan, where they had the whole, hey, here come the guys with the guns and they shoot at you. And, are you talking about that kind of experience? Or?
Exactly that type of situation. In fact, we did a project in Jordan. I don't know if you did the training at one of the bases, the King Abdullah training center there, but they do. There is a lot of, it's exactly what you're describing, but there's a lot of cost to put someone through that. And it's,
yeah, horrific. Yeah.
There are costs involved around getting people in one location, the travel, and so there are a lot of, but it works. I mean, so despite the cost, it's something that people learn through that experience, and it really kind of improves the awareness. So what we actually, when we began, it was kind of, we had a background in media content production, we had a background in software, we had a background in international development. We kind of brought these elements together, linked with a kind of an interest in how gaming worked and gamification principles around learning, and essentially proposed a project around security training for NGOs, and it was a project we created. We did it out in Kenya. It was a big project. We partnered with an agency in the UK called Red R, who were involved in. They specialise in supporting humanitarian aid workers be more aware of security issues and risks. And we got some funding through the UK's International Development Department. We got some funding through USAID, the American aid guys, and we created a big. It was around, in the end, the title was Field Security Management, but it was a full story. If you were kind of working for a health emergency kind of NGO, from negotiating access, like for a cholera outbreak, to that there were social issues, you've got staff issues of there's roadblocks, there are kind of disturbances, all these events that might happen, kind of condensed in it. And it was like effective what we created, I suppose, like an interactive modular film, where you've got these different experiences, and you've got different staff you're interacting with. So we filmed it all, and it was we got some good coverage from that. We were like covered here in the Guardian, and we were also invited by the UN to the kind of the World Humanitarian Summit that they were running at the time, and presenting it as an innovation in the sector. But we always saw that as a stepping stone for the type of learning that it underpinned, that more interactive and immersive experience. What would you do in this situation? How it would unfold, but in a dynamic way. Not you watch something, then you answer some questions, and we wanted something that was much more game-like, where you were responding. You've got to make real-time decisions. There's a degree of pressure. So that's how we started, and we did more work in that space. We did a project you mentioned Jordan. We worked with the Norwegian Refugee Council around a project for kind of frontline aid workers in Syria, and it was very difficult to get people from that background who were like, it was very difficult for NGOs to operate in Syria a few years ago, and they often worked through remote partners who had they couldn't leave the country, they got no background in humanitarian aid. So we were able, through the approach we took and the project we created, I suppose, to create something. I don't want to sound, because I think we created something really, we won some awards with it actually, but we created something very engaging. But it was the next best thing. If you cannot have everyone flown over to a place and do a week's training, but you can scale this type of learning that gives people a sense of what it's like, how you understand humanitarian principles, how you would make ethical decisions in certain situations, and have them in a safe way learn about what you might do in different situations. So yeah, that's how we really start, and we kind of branched out from there, doing projects in different areas, from health and safety through to managing difficult situations in a corporate environment. And we were learning by doing these projects both what technology worked best, and how kind of people responded to it, what worked and what didn't. And that kind of took us to where we are now, where we're lucky enough to kind of be able to tell a story where we got some investment to develop the software behind this process to make it, again, accessible and scalable for people. So it reduced the barriers for access.
So I mean, if I know this is going to kind of fast forward, but then we can loop back. Like, if I'm either in, a corporation in the US or the UK, or I'm, a humanitarian consultant in the middle of Syria, how are you delivering this? Is this, I open up a web browser and I'm able to kind of just use that? Do I need a specific technology? Am I downloading something? How's it look? What's it actually like?
So yeah, there's two elements to it. So when we began, so let's take the project we did with the Norwegian Refugee Council. We delivered a full platform, like a kind of we have our own LMS that really makes it simple to have a standalone project where you can put all your learning in one place. So the Norwegian Refugee Council project was a perfect case in point, where we had a platform. It was called the Frontline Humanitarian Toolkit. You would sign in, it was free to access. So it was all in Arabic for, as I say, locally based aid workers in the Middle East. And it was delivered via, but you just needed a browser, it was all online. But what we have now, the interactive elements of that, so what I would describe as kind of interactive scenarios that are part of that course, what we have now is kind of a cloud-based software. So if you were the content creator, so you were interested in creating this content for your own learners, you would now be able to create in a very simple, easy way these interactive game-like experiences and build them and share them just the same way you would a YouTube video. You can just embed it. So there's two levels there. There are the projects we worked on previously where we're delivering a full solution, essentially an LMS with the scenario, to where we are now, where we're more enabling others to be able to create this type of immersive content very easily.
Cool. Well, then take me there. If I'm an instructional designer, I'm an organization, I have needs, anything from, I actually, there's another guest on the show recently who was very VR focused, and she was talking about agriculture, and economic scenarios for buyers and sellers in a marketplace, whatever. Or let's just say, I'm a local fire department in, New York. What's the time commitment and investment? I can see many people listening right now going, oh man, like I've got to do really high quality video. I've got to hire a film crew. I've got to, like, what's my investment in the process that then allows me to come to NearLife, bring all the pieces together to create that experience?
So yes, that's where I suppose we use immersive in the broadest sense, because we've done the type of project I'm describing that relates to how we started. They're almost with like a kind of a blue chip version. A lot of time we filming in location, we've got actors, and it's a very but because it's kind of a high stakes content, there's the investment. Well, this is something we really need to invest in. We've got a duty of care in this space. So but the authoring tool itself, it's really allows you to very easily create interactive content. So we have users from all around the world who do everything from maybe they create things like I'm describing, but you can just have stuff you shot on your phone. I mean, you could have you could export just PowerPoint slides as video clips, or photos as video clips. Or we work with, we have kind of a loose arrangement partnership with Beyond. We did a webinar with them recently, like an animation tool like Beyond, where you can create simple animations, but you can make interactions. So you can make hotspots on the scenes. So click on this to do this, and so it's a way of we're empowering the learning designer and creator to be able to produce the content that's right for them, both in terms of budget, time commitments, and all the rest. So you could pull together something very quickly in a few hours. To learn the tool, it's non-technical. So we're very much in the, you don't need to, and it's like that no coding necessary type idea. It's a very simple solution. You don't really even need to be a learning designer. I think anyone who's used to using simple tools like many people use Canva now as a design tool. In that kind of space, easy to use, but it empowers you to be able to make more immersive and interactive content. So as I say, there is the risk you are going to put your own content in to build it, but the commitment is linked to, I suppose, the end result. How sophisticated does the video need to be? Does a video slide do the trick?
Sure.
In many ways it will do, but the VR element works the same. The authoring works the same. It's just you would choose in our tool, for example, that is it going to be a standard 2D video, or is it going to be a 360 or a 180 video? And I mean, there are many now, pretty cost-effective ways of shooting 360 and 180 content. So sure. you can quickly give people that experience, and you don't, because our authoring tool is cloud-based and works on kind of pure web VR. You don't need a particular headset. You don't need any apps or any stuff. You can interact with it directly from your browser. So as long as you've got a phone, maybe you want a cardboard headset, but beyond that, there's no barrier to use.
What sort of evidence or analytics or case studies, I guess, what was it, that ultimately 5 years ago you said, this is the direction, this is where we're headed, this is why immersive learning is the thing, this is your path? Were there specific case studies, or like, some statistic that you're like, yes, the engagement and the uptake and the learning outcomes are just so much more powerful? Something you can share with us?
Yeah, well, I think we learned a lot along the way and kind of the journey we've been on. So, I mean, I talked to you about how we started around how you take this kind of very time consuming and expensive kind of in-person simulation. How could you give people an experience and make that accessible to many more people? So we start from that basic, simple premise. And when we were kind of researching that, I suppose the area we started to look at, first of all, was around kind of game-based learning, how people learn better from interaction, how people learn better from, being involved in the experience. So we were kind of focused on this kind of point of view, choose your own adventure style experience where you're going through the journey, and it's interactive storytelling, narrative. So that is where we first looked, and there's a lot of research from the likes of MIT and others about how it improves engagement and how it improves retention. And we've since kind of done our own research around projects we've done about, and we've certainly got the feedback that the learner prefers this. So the learner prefers it. It's a better experience for them. So you've got the kind of the win-win situation of, well, improves knowledge retention, and the learner prefers it. So what's the barrier then? Well, you could say, you talked about content, is the cost involved? Well, that's where we're been focused, trying to solve the problem, to actually reduce the barrier to be able to deliver this type of immersive experience in a more affordable way. And then ultimately, when you talk about large scale in-person role play exercises that are difficult to replicate, difficult to scale, you were going to save time and cost in doing that. So that's the kind of the puzzle we're trying to put together. But we recently did like a project with the World Health Organization around their emergency medical teams program. Again, came from our origins really in the humanitarian space. We've done a number of projects over the years in that, but it was like a pilot actually for the VR capabilities that we brought in. And they wanted people to kind of have this experience. What if you were posted overseas as part of an emergency medical team? What would you do in this situation? Everything from kind of, security situations to, again, there were kind of gender issues, all the kind of knotty problems that you might face. How would you respond in that situation? And so we did that project, but we did more specific research then, because we were going from like straightforward interactive video to interactive VR. But the research we've done around that, like Ofcom here in the UK, who were a regulator in the broadcast industry, I mean, they released research only a couple of months ago that said with the fully immersive experience, like the VR stuff, knowledge retention can be as much as 90% greater. So sure. I mean, you've got a huge difference in impact. So I think we're in a position right now, this is generally across the industry, where there are barriers, there are silos of technologies, there are all this. And so, as I say, if we're trying to do anything, we're trying to make this type of learning, which the evidence would seem to suggest works and people like it, how you make that accessible and less of a barrier. And the type of problem you say, like content, is it difficult? Will it be difficult to get started? What's the time investment? Minimize those barriers to make it accessible to as many people as possible.
Yeah, the ROI on this sounds, I mean, again, the more people I talk to about VR and implementing these kinds of technologies, it sounds like the upfront investment in terms of time and money still may be a little more expensive than, what you'd consider a traditional LMS or something like that. But the ultimate outcomes in terms of retention, learner outcomes, these types of things far outweigh, having, that typical like compliance training, right? Where it's like, click through a slide. So those are key things. Yeah. Is there, where are the subjects that you say no to, right? So we've talked about thus far over the last 20 minutes here. So, security issues, health issues, places where there's this human interaction and you're having to make sort of decisions in, those soft skill kinds of things, leadership decisions, human interaction kind of. Is this, can I teach math using this? Can I teach, English using, like, is that something that you're considering, or you kind of say, hey, look, other way?
I have to be honest and say I'm still not sure yet where the limit will be, or where you think, well, this perhaps doesn't work in that space, because we have had use cases where we've not kind of conceived that it was really in that space. Like we had a US-based professor who was teaching computer software engineering, so it's like essentially computer science, and he used like a slide-based branching approach. How, what will you do next? And he saw a very, very simple way that he could use our software to teach that in a more interactive way, to track the choices, how you think about a problem. So again, not something we would have considered, but then when he explained it and how he already did it, then I could see how what we offered would work. So it's really anywhere where you want to have people have a kind of take a pathway or interact with decisions. But we've kind of bled out of the learning space to have, you might call, wider knowledge sharing. So public information campaigns where you've got what would you do in a certain situation with bystander response, like if you see someone having a heart attack on the street, we supported like a public information campaign around that, where people played through a scenario. So it bleeds out beyond the kind of the original vision we had, which is, I suppose, taking these immersive simulation type exercises into the digital space. It's in areas like I've said, kind of teaching software engineering, but also, as I say, like kind of public information or educational campaign type activity. So there's a lot of potential, and we learn every time we have a conversation with someone about what their plans are, because there are different use cases. I mean, we recently got a new client who are a user, UK coaching, who are like the national body in the UK for supporting sports coaches, and they're using it or looking to use it in every way, from teaching specific skills within sports through to the type of soft skills stuff you say, how you deal with on youth level with parents, or difficult conversations, or behavioral issues.
How do you deal with the sideline mom? I don't know. That's a big one.
That's it. So yeah, it's interesting. So I've not yet kind of got clear answers to that question, because we've not targeted that area, but again, people have used it for training people on software products. So what would you do next?
One of the things I love the most about these conversations is, just like everyone else, I kind of come in with a preconceived notion about what this is, and then throughout the conversation, my mind has kind of exploded. It's like, wait, let's break the walls of the classroom and think about, what this is about learning. This is about how we're educating. And it's everything from those really, really specific moments of, look, this is a vaccination campaign and here's how you deal with a difficult client, to a public service announcement where, a government wants to put out maybe a small app or a website where it's like, look, let's work our way through what the issues are. Very, very cool stuff.
Sorry, I was going to say, and the good thing actually in the more public facing activities, that the way our software works and the way we've conceived of it, it's tracking all the decisions you go through. So you've got the analytics behind it to understand these people chose this many people chose that. You can break that down further into groups. So you can, it's actually got the potential to give you a much richer data and understanding of the groups that you're engaged with, because you look at patterns and all the rest of it. So it's which is, I still think there's huge value in in-person simulation exercises and these group exercises, but you don't get that individual feedback of someone's behavioral activity and how they responded in situations, and get that picture in as rich a way. So there are things that technology can bring us in that terms of understanding that it's more difficult to garner from just doing them in person.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you have one of those emergency response scenarios and you got 300 people showing up for it, just one of those, like for instance, here in Mexico, they do a lot of earthquake simulation, right?
Yeah.
And you can think about all kinds of first responders and whatnot. Tracking them in real time is an impossibility. But if they were doing it through a simulation through NearLife or something like that, you'd get to see each individual pathway. What choices did they make? Why'd they make those choices? Was there a common answer that everybody got wrong, or something that everybody got right, et cetera?
exactly. You're actually talking. I've got my own personal dream of one use case, because we've worked with the UK International Search and Rescue Team, who go. They're part of the International Search and Rescue Group that the UN has. So you'll have teams dispatched to maybe Mexico or any country, like the recent, whether it's the bomb, not the bomb, but rather there was the explosion in Lebanon, I think, end of last year, and where you've got big impact or a big event, or Haiti with the earthquake. You've got an international response. So we've worked in that space and kind of supported that. But there are similar big simulation exercises like you're talking in Mexico. I think in the UK they did one just over a year or so ago around a tube collapse in London. Like there was so it's a massive disaster, and you've got multi-agency task force. And what my dream is that, but there's so many agencies involved, you can imagine it'd be difficult to coordinate, and we're really just enabling others to create content. But I always felt for that type of exercise you're describing in Mexico, if you had an interactive simulation game, even if you did it the same way they normally do it with all the volunteers, but you filmed that through multiple angles, and you could play through it from the perspective of different agencies and see how they interrelate and interact. That's like the kind of holy grail for me of what this type of software could deliver.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. How much I've seen it, and I'm going to encourage everyone to go to NearLife, and you've got a bunch of great sort of introductory videos and case studies and stuff that I looked at before we did this recording. How much of this is or the better question is, are all of the scenarios chosen by a human? For example, am I coming in and I'm building all of the possible pathways, or is any of this sort of adaptive AI driven, that kind of stuff? Like where does that line blur, and is that maybe that's the future? I don't know.
Yeah, we've been doing research in that space. I would say we currently have a project with Greater Manchester Police. We're based, as I say, in the Manchester area, so we've been supporting them with the software and the technology. We're doing some research with them around kind of investigation scenarios, so a bit more complex than we currently offer, where it's decision leads to outcome. We're looking at kind of how you can layer the decision making so that you can track interactions, and you can kind of set conditions and achievements that will unfold later, how things happen. So much more moving further into kind of a game-like experience. So we can have everything, the simple interactions. What did you choose? What do you think? To this kind of tracking of interaction. So as part of that research we've been doing, the R&D we've been doing in that space, we've been looking at things like AI, how you can track patterns, how you could, if you've got people kind of taking notes, how you can pick up keywords that they might have added, layers of layers of understanding. But I suppose it's been more on the side of how you might have scripted aspects that might involve a chatbot with some AI interaction, how you, rather than where we've not looked at it yet, which I think was your original question, but there may be a future in that, is that you would map out the game diagram based on kind of an AI understood pattern of behavior, so what you could see a future where that is possible if you look at all the problems and you feed in all the kind of the pinch points and the problems with like a big scale, let's say, disaster exercise, and you could see how you actually might be able to map out a game, and you still might need to create some of the content and maybe film it or do it with animations, however you create it, but there's something there, definitely. And we have got users who are again in the emergency services where they do a lot of this. We have an ambulance service who we've worked with that, and they use it in their call centers, their response. So if you make an emergency call, how they prioritize different categories, and you've got to make these choices in the game they built using our software. And you could see that something like that, that's very very specific and very much you're dealing with specific categories, how AI patterns could feed into that.
Cool. Wow. One of the things that's awesome is that we're in this space now that has seen such rapid growth, has seen such rapid, massive investment. The the concept has been proven. And so now it's where do we take it? And the good news is there just seems to be no end to where we can take it, right? At the end of the day, there's different scenarios for different situations. We've talked so much, in the positive. Tell me about the challenges. Like what kind of negative feedback do you get from users of this, or what is the pushback from either potential or current clients around, we didn't like the way this worked, or we need to change that? What are the limps that you see?
So I think one of them could be that you mentioned it earlier about content. Is it, is it going to be time investment? Do we want to, we've only got so much limited capacity. So I think that's one issue. I think people who already, let's say there are two groups of people. There are people who already completely buy into the value of immersive learning. So for them, a conversation about what we do is often very straightforward, because all the ideas that we've been talking about and making it easier, making it scalable, reducing the barriers, then it's really solving problems that they might have, because it's, there might be a barrier to immersive learning. So we're solving that. I think you've got maybe another group who maybe, are kind of happy with the way they do things, or they just feel that they just need to provide a certain level of information in terms of the learning. And then it's is the additional content or the additional value that this immersive experience or the more interact, is it worth it really for them? And that's I think that's like a question that is answered by the end user. So on the one hand, people who see the value and see it for the value in the space they're in, then it's solving problems. For other people who maybe are happy with a more traditional approach, or face-to-face, or some basic learning management system, sharing of information, and people go through the process, then I think there's more of a conversation there about impact or value, return on investment, whatever you want to describe it. So I think that's an area that there is a kind of I think it brings its most value when you already see the value, if you see what I mean. And then this is an effective way to do it. I think one of the other ones, I would say, because things are changing so much and remote learning has grown so rapidly, it's been a growth industry, I suppose, for the last 20 years, but there's been an acceleration over recent years, and then even more so this last 12 plus months during the pandemic. I think perhaps one frustration for some people in the content world is and the many tools, and many different technologies, and this kind of silos, and you get, I suppose, a design lock-in that you have to do things this way. I'm using this software, so it has to work this way. So I mean, and I think that's a reality in many different industries. You're getting more specialist software providers who, so I think that the mentality towards that will change, because it's so difficult, even for a Microsoft, to have software that does everything, So if you've got need or see a value in here, I think you are, if you're creatively engaged with using software tools, you are you're putting together your own patchwork of and we definitely, I mean, as far as like a strategic decision where we think we can add value, I see ourselves as like a support tool, as part of the arsenal of things that can help you and are easy to integrate. So if you've already got an LMS, or you've already got, you're already using even other authoring tools, we can fit within that, architecture. All we are is an interactive video and VR authoring tool that will give you richer data insights and make it easier to do this. But we fit, just like, as I say, I often use the analogy of just like a YouTube video. You might just embed your YouTube video. Well, you do the same with what we have.
So then, before my last question, I have to then do this follow-up is, so are you exporting like a SCORM package or some other package, or is it, like, if I'm using Adaptive or some other e-authoring tool, how would I plug into NearLife so that I could use that?
So there are two ways for our larger scale enterprise users. It is possible to export a SCORM package, so it's downloaded and it's completely separate. And there are some big kind of government clients who, for firewall reasons, are maybe still uncomfortable with some cloud-based tools. But most of our users really, because you get the analytics and because you can edit and change things even and share things more rapidly, are using kind of the cloud-based.
And so you just like, you'd like link to it, and then so they
Yeah,
hop out of the LMS for a while and they use it and then they come back, or?
Well, it's effectively, it's an embed code. So you put it in,
Ah,
so you're embedding it within the LMS. So as I say, like kind of a YouTube video, if you're going through your LMS and
I
then
get
there's a
it.
YouTube, that's the way it works. Yeah.
Super cool.
And we can communicate, we kind of link with, so you can track things like, have they completed it? You can kind of build in scoring. So it can communicate, and you can do like an LTI integration. So
Say, is this XAPI driven, or how's it?
the XAPI is there at the basic level at the moment, whereby you can communicate the scores, but that's an area we are expanding, because I mean, I still think XAPI is, it's at the early stage, even though it's been around a while, it's at the early stages of adoption where what it can do. But for what we do, actually, XAPI is fantastic, because if you can track, this person did this here, this person didn't, and so we're part of the project we're doing around investigations that I described earlier. Part of the R&D we're doing is ramping up the XAPI capabilities. But yeah, it does integrate with SCORM, XAPI, LTI. So we've designed it with integration in mind, that we don't want this to be a tool you've got to move out to or standalone. It should work with what else you have and go with the grain of the ecosystem. Super
cool. So last question for you is one I ask everyone. What are you the most excited about over the next 6 to 12 months? It could be a shiny object, a new piece of technology coming out. It could be a new version of NearLife. It could be another company. What are you paying attention to and getting psyched about?
So we have, we recently very pleased with, when we launched the VR capabilities at the beginning of this year with the WHO pilot. That was a big milestone for us. But the next big thing for us really is this next phase of the authoring tool and the capabilities, which is this more game-like interactions where you'll still be able to do everything you can do now and have the kind of, you create simple scenarios and very easy. So we want to maintain the ease of use, but for those who do see more complex simulations and more like game-like experiences as really adding value, like something with police investigations where you've got to find objects, speak to suspects, gather evidence. That is the next phase for us, to take it to the next level. And we will be at DevLearn. We're one of the sponsors at DevLearn this year in Las Vegas. So we'll be there, and we'll be launching the new kind of version of the software at that event. So that for us is the big thing we're looking forward to.
Super cool. Everybody go to DevLearn. You want to see, taste, and smell it. Who doesn't want to? Who doesn't want to go to Vegas, Mike? That's what I want to know. Who doesn't?
Yeah,
Mike Todd.
Yes,
Mike Todd, the CEO of NearLife, an immersive learning technology platform. That sounds really, really cool. I mean, from what I've seen of it, sounds fantastic. I can't thank you enough for being on the show today and sharing not only your experiences, but why immersive learning is the thing and what you see for the future. Thank you so much for your time today.
Fantastic. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning into today's episode of the eLearning Podcast. If you like what you heard, please do me the favor of following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or whichever social media you prefer. Also, if you're interested in diving deeper on e-learning, I encourage you to get your free ticket to the eLearning Success Summit, where there are more than 70 hours of presentations on best practices. Just go to elearningsuccesssummit.com. And then finally, for the latest news, information, and resources about e-learning, come subscribe to our newsletter at lmspulse.com. Thanks.